Hello, welcome to PCAP's Prairie's Got the Goods Week. My name is Caitlin Morose and I am the Stewardship Coordinator with Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan, or PCAP. This afternoon, Colleen Cuvelier, LSRCD Manager, will be talking about ALUS Canada in the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District. Check out other events going on for our Prairie's Got the Goods Week. Tomorrow at noon, join us for a webinar about prairie wetlands in a changing climate by Dr. Pascal Badiou from Ducks Unlimited Canada. Don't miss a presentation about wetlands, flood control, and ecosystem services in the Smith Creek Drainage Basin, a case study in Saskatchewan, by Dr. John Pattison Williams from the Department of Resource Economics and Environmental Sociology at the University of Alberta. To register for these webinars or to see a schedule for our Prairie's Got the Goods Week, please visit the PCAP website, www.pcap-sk.org. I would like to take a moment to note that Prairie's Got the Goods Week is presented by Crescent Point Energy, Wildlife Habitat Canada, and Sask Power, as well as Environment and Climate Change Canada. In-kind support for today's webinar has been given by the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District and ALUS Canada. A reminder to all of our listeners out there, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type it into the question section of the webinar dashboard at any time throughout the presentation. And Colleen will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. I'm happy to introduce to you today our presenter, Colleen Cuvelier. She has coordinated the ALUS program since 2015. Colleen has worked in watershed management and ecological goods and services delivery for 16 years, including 13 years as the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District Manager. Colleen possesses diplomas in land and water management and business administration. As a resident of Rivers, Manitoba, Colleen has first-hand knowledge of the actions taken by landowners to protect the source water enjoyed by the river's residents. So with that, I'm happy to pass it over to Colleen.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin, and welcome everybody. We'll just get the presentation up and going here. So thank you for the invitation to be part of Saskatchewan Prairie Conservation Action Plan's Prairie's Got the Goods Week. As mentioned, I am Colleen Cuvelier, and in addition to being the district manager for the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District, I am also the ALUS program coordinator within the district. So today's presentation, I'm only going to speak about the ALUS program since the relaunch in 2015, and not about the pilot program in the arm of Blanchard that occurred from 2005 to 2008. So what we're going to cover off today is a little bit about the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District, ALUS Canada, and ALUS in the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District. That being the people involved, delivering the program, some of our projects, and communications. So today we are one of 18 conservation districts found throughout Agro-Manitoba. You can see us circled there in kind of a golden yellow, and we are located in the southwestern part of Manitoba. So the district was formed in 1999, and we take in the majority of the Little Saskatchewan River watershed and part of the Arrow Oak River watershed. We're home to about 10,000 people, a number that swells during the summer with the many cottagers that call the district home. So each conservation district is formed as a partnership between the provincial and municipal governments, and we have 8 municipal partners. We cover an area of 4,200 square kilometers that stretches from Riding Mountain National Park in the north to the Assiniboine River in the south. We have the community of Oak River on the west side, to Minnedosa and Kerr Lake on the east side. Our 2 main waterways are the Oak River and the Little Saskatchewan River. We have 6 sub-districts, 2 that cover the Oak River watershed and 4 within the Little Saskatchewan River. Each is its own community to identify local watershed priorities. And this is where we have our 33 sub-district members. These are farmers, municipal representatives, people out on the land. So they identify priorities such as flooding and drainage and water quality. Our board of directors is formed with representatives from each of the sub-districts. So within our watersheds, we have scenic landscapes, recreational activities like ice fishing. We're home to a variety of wildlife, and the prairie pothole region can be found within our district. So why was ALUS a fit for the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District? We have a history of working with farmers in the implementation of projects that benefit water, soil, and habitat. About 10 years ago, integrated watershed management plans were formed for our watersheds. The ALUS program is a great tool in our toolbox. It is helping us to achieve the 5 goals in each of our watershed plans, which focus on safe drinking water, surface water management, surface water quality, groundwater quality and quantity, and the maintenance and restoration of natural areas, wetlands primarily, but also bush and forested areas. ALUS is also helping the community adapt to climate change. As we have recognized, things have changed. Weather patterns have changed. In 2018, we experienced 30 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning in June for consecutive days with not a lot of rain during the growing season. So as a conservation district, we have a vision and mission statement. So the vision is that the district envisions a strong, committed grassroots movement of all the stakeholders focused upon the land, the water, and the other natural area resources within its watersheds, and that the district as a group of stakeholders will protect these resources, thereby providing an opportunity for future generations to enjoy and benefit from our watersheds. How we achieve that is to encourage and support sustainable management of conservation practices that enhance quality of life and build sustainable communities through integrated land and water management. So when you look at the ALUS Canada vision and mission, there are parallels between our conservation district vision and mission and ALUS Canada's. Because, so as the ALUS Canada vision reads, it's community developed and farmer delivered. ALUS sustains agriculture, wildlife, and natural spaces for all Canadians, 1 acre at a time. And how that's achieved is by enabling Canadians to provide direct support to a national network of farmers and ranchers delivering ecosystem services in their communities, including clean air, clean water, carbon sequestration, erosion control, flood mitigation, pollinator support, and wildlife habitat. So ALUS is based on 8 principles, and these guide all decisions at the national and community level. So these principles start off with one that's where ALUS is community developed. So we incorporate the local knowledge with the watershed priorities that are outlined in our watershed plans. Farmers and ranchers, as we know, are in the best position to deliver nature's benefits on their land because in our area, they are the primary landowner. ALUS is targeted because we focus on marginal and ecologically sensitive parcels of land, and so that they are managed in a different manner to produce nature's benefits. We recognize that the benefits from nature produced by project activities have economic value. And ALUS, a thing that's very important is that it is a voluntary program. So farmers and ranchers choose to participate and they have flexible agreements that suit their operation. In terms of being integrated, the delivery will complement existing conservation programs. And in one of the project slides, I'll provide an example of this integration. In terms of accountability, projects are independently monitored and audited, and projects are science-based in that we consider social, economic, and environmental sciences are used to guide program development and implementation. So a little bit about ALUS Canada. ALUS Canada, a Weston Family Initiative, is a national program helping farmers and ranchers to produce cleaner air, cleaner water, more biodiversity, and other ecosystem services in their communities. ALUS Canada is a recognized leader in sustainability that is revolutionizing the way Canadians support the environment. So as of March 31st, 2018, ALUS Canada has dispersed nearly $6.5 million in funding to ALUS communities across Canada. an investment that is multiplied by farmers, ranchers, and communities on the ground. As a result, there are currently more than 18,000 acres enrolled in the ALUS program, thanks to 575 participants from 21 communities in 5 provinces. Those provinces being Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. ALUS Canada supports each community by providing staff and resources. These include a hub manager, communications at a national level, and database support. Payment is for, and one thing to point out is that, hold on, wrong slide. So a little bit about the ALUS program. As mentioned, ALUS provides support to farmers and ranchers to manage and maintain the ALUS projects established on their land. These projects produce ecosystem services such as cleaner water, cleaner air, and more biodiversity for the benefits of the community at large. As a community-led program, the ALUS Advisory Committee, comprised of farmers and ranchers, conservation district representatives, and other interested stakeholders, prioritize local environmental target areas. Through the ALUS Little Saskatchewan River program, our projects enhance and improve natural features such as wetlands, riparian areas, and grasslands to enhance the production of ecosystem services on those project areas. Another target is environmentally sensitive land currently under annual crop production. So on those types of lands, we're doing projects to convert to perennial cover areas that are erosion prone, drought intolerant, saline, or subject to flooding. So we are paying for the maintenance and management of projects and not for the ecosystem services themselves. So what are the ecosystem services? Well, we're looking at things like clean water, clean air, fertile soil, carbon sequestration, erosion control, buffering of climate extremes such as flooding, and healthy fish, wildlife, and habitat, and pollinator habitats. ALUS Canada is ALUS Little Saskatchewan River's primary partner. ALUS Canada's funding comes from the W. Garfield Weston Foundation and foundational partners Delta Waterfowl, and other foundational partners are Delta Waterfowl and the Government of Canada's National Conservation Plan, as well as other major funders. So on top of this, ALUS Little Saskatchewan River has been supported by Environment Canada's Lake Winnipeg Basin Stewardship Fund and the Manitoba Habitat Heritage Corporation. So we are here at Little Saskatchewan River. We are an ALUS community under the ALUS Canada umbrella, currently the only one in Manitoba. So we have a memorandum of understanding with between ALUS Canada and the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District, where we agreed to deliver their program. And so within that MOU, it lays out the roles and responsibilities and the financial support that will be provided. So as mentioned at the onset, we relaunched in 2015. So 2019 will be our 5th year of program delivery. One of the things that we had to overcome when we relaunched the program was overcoming the stigma from the pilot program. So when discussing the program with a farmer, I don't start by asking what existing natural areas do you have and then trying to make projects fit. It's in what projects do you have in mind? The expression of interest is structured that way. And as we've gone through the years here, we're delivering better quality projects and we're learning how to deliver the program better. So what are our numbers? Well, currently we have 1,900 acres enrolled in the program, and that's a combination of 282 projects that are off-site watering systems, fencing projects, wetland and riparian area enhancements, and conversion of annual cropland. The financial investment captures the contribution of both ALUS and the participant in project establishment, as well as the annual payments made to participants. So who do we have for people involved in our community? So there are 3 levels to each local ALUS community, or at least in our case there is. We have the legal entity. So for us, that's the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District. They provide banking services and through their organization, and they also provide us with some office space. The Partnership Advisory Committee that you see in the picture, you want to bring the community to the table with your PAC, for short. So in our PAC, we have farmers, we have the Manitoba Habitat Heritage Corporation, we have Delta Waterfowl, and we have some conservation district members. They represent our legal entity, but they also have a passion for the environment and stewardship practices. In all PACs, the rule of thumb is that each should be made up of at least 50% farmers. And so this picture was taken at one of our initial PAC meetings. So the PAC's role is to oversee the program. They plan the budget, they approve projects, and they have the financial responsibility for the program. They are guided by a terms of reference. Other roles they serve are they set up the payment rates, they review the landowner project proposals, which we typically do once a year. So that's coming up upon us fast now. And they will also prioritize proposals if we're successful with additional funding. We've come through some growing pains, and we're still growing, but we're heading in the right direction. We have had some gains and losses in terms of our PAC members, just through natural growth. And one of the things that the PAC is always discusses regularly is who do we have at the table and who are we missing from the table. The PAC typically meets 2 to 3 times a year, and I will say I have a very engaged PAC here. They're always looking to push the envelope on new initiatives. So things like soil regeneration and how do we incorporate precision agriculture. So as said, I am the program coordinator, and I am responsible for the day-to-day delivery of the program. So a program coordinator needs to have an extensive skill set because you're meeting with landowners to develop proposals. It doesn't hurt to be able to do some GIS mapping. There's some financial requirements. You look after fundraising, the reporting through the database, overseeing project establishment and monitoring. So I'm fortunate here because I have support from other staff within our conservation district when it comes to things like the financials, GIS mapping, and project monitoring. So as I said, the PAC does set up a rate schedule, and our rate schedule is based on average land rental rates in the local area, as well as environmental priorities as determined by the PAC. So annual payments are paid on a per acre basis, and we use separate payment rates for each land type. So for example, a rate for an area converted from annual cropland is determined separately than for a wetland. Areas converted from annual cropping to perennial crops can still be used for agricultural purposes, such as grazing or haying. However, as agricultural income is derived from the land, the ALUS payment is adjusted to reflect the agricultural income. Typically, that's a reduction by about half. Natural areas such as wetlands and existing bush are not subject to the adjusted rate due to use. So this is a fairly detailed schematic, but it's how we deliver the ALUS program. So we start off by a farmer or rancher showing some interest in the ALUS program, and they do that by completing their expression of interest form, the EOI. They provide some basic details about their farming operation and the project that they would like to implement on their farm. Projects implemented with ALUS are not prescriptive. If it makes sense for your farming operation, fine, but we recognize that it might not make sense for your neighbor's farming operation. So once I have the expression of interest, I follow up with the farmer or rancher. Depending on the time of the year, we use an ortho map at the kitchen table to discuss what types of projects they are interested in and where such projects would be situated on the farm in such a way that they are complementary to the farm operation. We focus ALUS projects generally on marginal or environmentally sensitive agricultural lands. And if we can once we've sat at the kitchen table, if the weather allows, then we go for a tour of their farm. So as the program coordinator, I can give the farmer ideas for projects that that would work, because some producers think that they have peaked in terms of possible projects because they're already doing offsite watering and rotational grazing. From there, we developed the project proposal, and the proposal identifies the project areas, an estimated acreage of the project area, what the project is, if it's fencing or seeding, how much it's going to cost, and what the annual payment would be. As mentioned, the PAC reviews the proposals. We usually do this prior to the start of field season because there's no point in reviewing proposals in July thinking somebody's going to have a chance to get them established during the growing season. The PAC decides to proceed or not to proceed with the projects identified in the proposal, whether to proceed immediately or delay due to a lack of funding, or not to proceed with the proposal. So at this point, a landowner or a farmer or rancher is called a participant, and an agreement is signed with each participant. The agreement details the project details and descriptions, a participant's duties and responsibilities under the program, things like establishment costs and annual payments, and a site plan, so a map describing the projects. So going forward, a typical ALUS agreement here in Little Saskatchewan River will have a 5-year term, and there is the ability to opt out at any time. That's the flexibility of the ALUS agreement. In the event the participant chooses to withdraw, there are it indicates in the agreement any adjustment to establishment costs and annual payments. One thing that my ALUS participants like is that a caveat is not registered on the land title. For some people, that can be a real stickler. So from there, the participant establishes their project, and we cost share the establishment of projects on a 50-50 basis. So project establishment costs include things like materials, equipment usage, and labor. So we do a site visit, and the ALUS report card are used for quality assurance monitoring and to confirm acreage. Once projects are established, Conservation District staff visit to confirm that the project is established and completed, and in each subsequent year during the agreement. Once we've checked the project and mapped it out in detail, we finalize a couple of the schedules within the agreement. And then after that, we make the annual payment to the participant, and we aim to do that in the fall of each year. Here in Manitoba, land taxes are usually due the end of October, so we kind of aim for that type of a time frame. The annual payment that the participant receives is compensation for the management and maintenance of the ALUS projects that produce clean air, clean water, and wildlife habitat. The annual payment is taxable income, and the district issues an AGR1 form for use when filing income tax. So the last bit here in terms of the project is that we do, and it goes back to the accountable principle of the ALUS program, is that verification by a third party occurs on a random selection of 10% of projects within a community. So this is one of the discussions that we had with when I was sitting down with the landowner and consulting on what projects we were going to enroll in ALUS. So yes, landowners decide what areas on their farms are enrolled in ALUS. And so in this case, when the landowner first submitted their proposal, they were looking to enroll all the areas you see colored in the map colored in this map. When the PAC reviewed the proposal, they identified 2 areas outlined in the black outline because they looked low, and maybe it made sense to seed those down as well. So I went back to the farmer with this additional option. He wasn't interested. That's fine, no harm, no foul. So an ALUS agreement is a 4-page agreement. As mentioned, there is some flexibility with the ALUS agreement because we recognize that circumstances change in a farmer's life. So having some flexibility in these agreements is a good thing. And yeah, so there are also 4 schedules that tie in with the agreement. The Schedule A and the Schedule B break down the ALUS project what is the project and some of the project management requirements. So things like rodent control, maintaining fence lines, who's responsible if there has to be reseeding done on a project, stuff like that. The Schedule C, so the map that you see on the slide is an example of a Schedule C. So each separate area is a project, and so in this case we have some enhanced wetlands, and we have some areas that were seeded down to perennial cover. The wetlands are the green projects, and the perennial newly established perennial stands are the red. So we don't enroll all wetlands that occur on a property. It's only those that are adjacent to the areas where there's been a management change, because seeding down those areas enhances those existing wetlands. So how do farmers deliver ecosystem services? So here's some of our project examples. So as mentioned, yeah, ALUS supports projects that are a change in management, and the management change can be a change in land use. So it can be a conversion of annual cropland to perennial cover or a shelter belt. And that management change can be a change in practice either directly or adjacent to a natural area like a wetland, riparian area, native prairie, or bush. And so in this example, picture that you see, there's two ALUS projects in that picture. The first is the forage stand that you see in the foreground. The other is the wetland that you see in the background. By establishing the forage stand, it enhances the existing wetland that it is beside. So when we look at the payment rate, we talk about factor in things like the soil type, the erosion potential, slope, if it's within one of our target areas outlined in our watershed plan. So through this project, we have improved water quality, recharged groundwater aquifers, protected against flooding, and offset the impact of drought. And an environmental reason for seeding down this field is to stabilize the steep slopes that would otherwise be prone to water erosion. In this case, the field was inefficient to farm because the 40-foot air seeder didn't fit. It was adjacent to a wetland, and the rolling topography, yeah, made it prone to erosion. So in terms of ALUS language, we talked about the generation of new and additional ecosystem services. So obviously the newly seeded perennial stand is a new project. We classify the wetland as being enhanced. So another conversion from annual crop to perennial. This is one of our projects from last year. And so this was a pollinator buffer strip establishment. So our participant in this case is an organic farmer. He just recently resumed management for this piece. And so while it isn't, they're looking to get it transitioned to organic and certified in that way, but he needed to create some degrees of separation between how he farms and his conventionally farming neighbors. And so a pollinator buffer strip is what made sense to him. So this project coming into 2019, I suspect is gonna look a little bit different because, yeah, it looks like there's a lot of barley here right now, and that was the companion crop that went down with the pollinator mix. So another project where we'll say conversion from annual cropland is through the establishment of shelter belts. So this is one of those projects. Through the use of the offsite watering system and fence to keep the livestock away from the river, additional ecosystem services are being generated within the riparian area. So in this case, it is the riparian area along the river that is enrolled in ALUS. And there was cost share. We'll do cost share on the fence and the offsite watering system because we're still pumping, the producer is still pumping water out of the river. So this project is an example of how we integrate with other programs, and is one of our more unique projects. So the landowner worked with the Manitoba Habitat Heritage Corporation to restore wetlands in the pasture. The restored ponds provided water for the livestock. So through the wetland restoration, the area outlined in yellow is being enhanced. And it is this area outlined in yellow that is enrolled in the ALUS program. The pond itself is part of a MHHC program. So wetland enhancement takes different forms. It can be through seeding down a perennial buffer around a wetland. It can be through the use of an off-site watering system. It can be fencing, and in this case, it was fencing. So the participant in this case, this is a field a pasture field where he kicks the cows out to for his spring calving season. So he was looking to get fence the cows away from the wetland to allow the natural vegetation to grow up. So it'll obviously not a lot of change in the first couple of years, but by the time the agreement's ended, it'll be interesting to see how much of the natural shrub and trees have come back to provide that shelter for the livestock. So through the ALUS program, we do a lot of tracking and reporting of our projects, and that is all captured in our ALUS database that ALUS Canada provides. So we capture program and project data in a standardized format, and then the database can be linked to an ESRI GIS mapping software to display program data directly. So we track everything from the expression of interest phase to the monitoring and verification stages. So in terms of our participants, we had our first participant networking event in 2018. We thought it was time to bring some of our 21 participants together. So we did a bit of a tour and barbecue and went out to see what some ALUS projects looked like. So we have also welcomed some of our funders out to look at the work that we are doing. So on this day, we had staff from Environment Canada visit. We welcome funders so that they can physically see what we are doing with the funding, and in doing so, they they get a better understanding of the program. So last year, yeah, we managed to get some project signs up at our ALUS project. And so here's a little story on the value of a sign. So in this case, yeah, we got the project sign up, and about a day or two later, I had a phone call from a producer neighboring where the sign went up, and he had talked to his neighbor, who is our ALUS participant, and said, well, what's this ALUS project about? So the participant said, well, phone Colleen and she'll give you some more information. So it has generated some neighbor inquiries, and at another location, one of our local newspaper reporters drove by, saw a project sign up, and did a follow-up story on what was going on. So there is value to having signs out there. We have had other PR over the course of our program. So this was a local announcement that we did at the time that we launched back through a tour we did at the Conservation District. So yeah, we have had media, whether it's through our local newspapers, regional newspapers like the Manitoba Cooperator, publications put out by the Manitoba Conservation Districts Association. So we have tried our best to do some marketing. So if you're looking for more information on the program, for sure visit the ALUS Canada website, or for more stuff specific to the program we deliver here in Little Saskatchewan River, check out our Conservation District website. So with that, I'll say thank you, and we'll see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I'm really amazed with how much work ALUS is doing, the Little Saskatchewan Conservation District, Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District, sorry. Bit of a mouthful like all of our nonprofit organizations.
That's right.
We have a couple questions here from listeners. A listener named Jason would like to know, sorry if I mispronounced that, how does a buffer pollinator work to help increase the yield?
Okay, so I'll be honest and say I'm not a scientist, but by providing the pollinator habitat, you've got I'll say you're bringing the bees to the field, and if you have habitat for the bees, you're going to encourage the bees to visit other parts of the field.
Okay, thank you for that answer. A listener named Dale would like to know what contacts, communications, and interactions are happening between and among the stakeholders that specifically include the seasonal cottage population that enjoys the benefits of the natural ecosystem.
We maybe don't do anything directly. It all depends on our capacity. So we'll try to have stuff in the local newspapers, or I know we partner with one of our farming families and set up a booth on Open Farm Day here in Manitoba. So yeah, we try, but our resources are sometimes limited in what we can achieve.
Absolutely. And another question is, you mentioned that ALUS has 282 projects in the Little Saskatchewan River Conservation District. What kind of projects, and could you give a few more details about some of those?
Okay. So a lot of our projects focus on wetlands, sometimes on riparian areas. So yeah, with some of our wetland projects, it can be a buffer around a wetland or adjacent to a wetland. As I used I'll go back to the one slide here. This one. So in terms of this participant, so you can see well, maybe it's a little challenging to see, but those areas that are outlined in red, well, one is like 1.5 acres, one is 3 acres, the other one is 9 acres. So it gets a little challenging with today's bigger equipment to actually get in and seed them. If the water table is high in the wetlands, it just makes those areas too wet to think you're going to annually crop. So for this participant, he says, well, let's seed those down. So yeah, we'll seed down odd-shaped areas in fields, and so yeah, we do a fair bit of perennial establishment around wetlands. Sometimes, though, it is, as I said, fencing out wetlands to keep the livestock away, and enhancing further through the use of off-site watering systems. I'm trying to think, did that answer that whole question?
Yeah, I think that answers everything. Thank you. A listener named Joanne would like to know if there are ALUS projects going on in Saskatchewan.
Yes, there are a couple of ALUS communities in Saskatchewan. I'm going to flip back here to the slides. If you go to the ALUS website, the alus.ca website, you can find out about the ALUS communities in Saskatchewan through that website.
Thank you for that answer. And just a note to our listeners, we've had people from ALUS Canada in Saskatchewan talk in some of our past events, and those webinars are actually recorded on the PCAP YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/user/skpcap. A listener named Daniel would like to know, have you done any wetland restorations yet? And if so, have they worked?
Well, some of our wetland restoration, and I'm going to go back to, hopefully I'm not making anybody dizzy going back and forth through the slides. So Indirectly, we've done some wetland restoration projects. We work with those in partnership with the Manitoba Habitat Heritage Corporation, and they've got the expertise on the wetland restoration construction. So at this point, any of the projects that we've been involved with, yes, they have worked. We are holding back more water.
Awesome. That's good to hear. And then there's just a follow-up to the question about ALUS in Saskatchewan. So one of our listeners named Sarah Tranberg has mentioned that if anyone's interested, they can contact her, and she's with Walkwater. That's WUQWATR, which in my opinion wins the the largest acronym for a nonprofit, or the most difficult acronym for a nonprofit organization. So that's Walkwater in Saskatchewan for information about ALUS projects there. And Colleen, we have a couple questions about pollinators again. So a listener named Sarah would like to know what would be considered a pollinator crop for a pollinator buffer.
Well, we're usually talking a perennial stand, and we're talking flowering plants. So whether it be forbs, I kind of forget the exact. There's different mixes, but you're looking at trying to have a flower, something flowering for the entire season. So obviously no one plant will flower, but and of course you want some diversity in your mix in terms of flower colors from presentations that I've heard and stuff like that. So sorry, I'm not a.
That's a great answer.
On the mix.
Actually, one of our listeners named Mick has commented in here, and he said sainfoin, alfalfa, bird's foot, trefoil would be pollinator crops, also blue borage. So thank you, Mick. I'm not an expert in this either, but yeah. We have another question from a listener named Nancy, and she said that you mentioned pollinator habitat projects, and could you elaborate on that, please? Would you be planting flowers or tree projects?
So I've got the slide up that is our pollinator buffer strip project. So in these projects, so we usually encourage the producer, or we consult with them, but we allow the producer to select their own seed. So this was kind of just a couple of passes with the 20-foot air seed or 20-foot seeding equipment. So you ended up with like a 40-foot strip. He put a companion crop down with it to help get it established, and yeah. So maybe doesn't quite answer the question, but as I say, this was our first ALUS project of this nature.
Thank you. And a listener named Daniel says, in Manitoba currently, will ALUS only fund projects within the LSRCD, or would projects in adjacent RMs qualify?
Well, currently, yes. We are the only ALUS community under the ALUS Canada umbrella in Manitoba. Because of our limited funding at this point, we are pretty sensitive to stay within our local conservation district.
Okay, thank you for that answer. That looks like all the questions that we have today. So Colleen, thank you so much for your excellent presentation and the details that you've been able to give us on the projects there. It's really amazing the work that you've done. It's just outstanding. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. I would just like to encourage everyone to check out the PCAP website. We have 4 more webinars going on for Prairie's Got the Goods Week. And I'd also like to note that when you leave this webinar, a quick survey will pop up. If you don't mind filling it out, it just takes a minute and it helps us get answers so we can put up a report for our funders and keep this event and our webinars going on into the future. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.